On April 13th, 2013, American soccer changed when Portland took on FC Kansas City, two title towns, on display to begin the 10th anniversary season of the NWSL. Elise Bennett could only dream then to be on the field she's ascended to now. While Christine Sinclair was there then, is now, and plays a starring role for the future. Portland Thorns, Kansas City Current, live on Twitch. The NWSL regular season has finally arrived at Providence Park in Portland, Oregon. The Portland Thorns open up their 10th season of NWSL play against the Kansas City Current. Mike Watts joined by the former Man United goalkeeper Gary Bailey. Glad to welcome you to a new season of the NWSL on Twitch. You know, both these teams coming off intriguing Challenge Cups. We got a chance to meet some of the new players for Portland Thorns, and the mix is starting to get right, and Hina Sagita's been really special.
Yeah, she has such an exciting player to bring to the club. Scored a couple of goals against San Diego Wave. Have a look at this one, left foot, far side of the goal. That's an excellent finish, and I know many of the fans can't wait to see her in action.
Meanwhile, for Kansas City, they're playing in the semifinal on Wednesday. That was not the betting odds going in.
It wasn't, and she's a big reason why. Kristen Hamilton, fantastic player. On the bench today, here's the goal against Chicago Red Stars that wrapped it up for her side, Kansas City Current. She can score goals. Maybe she will today if she comes off the bench.
Well, we've got the current events coming up here in Portland in just moments. The Riveters are ready as ever. Welcome to the regular season. The NWSL is back on Twitch. Kansas City and Portland are coming up next. Scenic Portland, Oregon. We're closing in on kickoff between the Thorns and the Current to open up this NWSL regular season. We're happy to have you worldwide live on Twitch. Mike Watts, Gary Bailey. Let's take a look at the lineups for this Portland side. They are back to full strength. The COVID outbreak sufficiently quelled, but Sagita and Smith will come off the bench. Nally, Coffey, Kuika move into the lineup.
Yeah, 3 changes from the team that lost 1-0 to Angel City, as you mentioned. Kuika, Coffey, Nally in. Moultrie, Pogosh, and Ryan go out. But it's those 2 names on the bench. Then we're going to be looking at Sophia Smith and Hina Sugita. Will they make an entrance at some stage in this match?
And notably back to the 3-back that Portland employed against OL Reign. Meanwhile, Kansas City, they've got a cup semifinal to worry about on Wednesday, and while that's not something Matt Potter indicated would change the lineup, we take a look. There's no Hamilton, no Pickett, no Desi Scott. 5 total changes, including the goalkeeper.
Yeah, you do get the sense they do have that semi-final on their mind. In comes 80 French back for Miller. Del Farber's in. Chardonnay Curran gets a run out. Addie McCain and Lola Bonta out go Leach. Desiree Scott, as you mentioned. Victoria Pickett and Kristen Hamilton. But there's some great players to bring off the bench if you need them for Kansas City Current.
There are the new secondary electric kits that just came out, and they'll be selling them Wednesday at the Challenge Cup semifinal. I think we can all get behind the new kits, right?
Yeah, they look good. They look good. It's more about how the players feel in them, of course. And the fact they've got themselves to a semi-final. Kansas City Current, exciting season, especially after the hardships of last year.
So Kansas City on the up and up. Meanwhile, for this Portland Thorns side, when we spoke with Rian Wilkinson, a lot of credit to Pierre Soubrier and the entire medical staff for not only getting her back to health, but also the other players that dealt with COVID protocols this past week. And look, Gary, you've been around the professional game long enough. There's not enough money in the world for a great medical staff around your club.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a problem, whether it's injuries, whether it's illnesses. And to be fair, they lost to Angel City. Had they've even got a draw, they'd be in the semi-finals themselves, Portland Thorns. So that was a tough blow to take, which is why I think they're going to really want to start off this season in front of their home fans in the most positive style possible.
You see Janine Becky in her 2nd game with the club. 80 French returning to familiar territory and with the same pregame excitement as ever. This regular season is underway for Portland and Kansas City. After the grueling 6-game Challenge Cup group stage, these sides get together for the 5th time all time and the 1st time in 2022. This Portland side, to your point, falling 1-0 to Angel City. Kristen Press's penalty is what gave Angel City their first win of any kind. They quickly followed that up last night and left Portland on the outside looking in by goal difference with Washington for the 4th and final spot in the Challenge Cup semifinal.
What it does as well, it's Portland with 2 losses in 3 matches.
Klingenberg early ball for Weaver, and Franch is there.
Yeah, straight to the goalkeeper, easy to collect. But for Portland, not often you get to say they've lost 2 in 3. They've been so incredibly successful over the entire history of the NWSL, now in its 10th season. And what you don't want as a professional player is then you go and lose another one and suddenly it's 3 and 4 and people start talking, confidence maybe dips. So again, for Portland Thorns, this is an absolute must win. For Kansas City Current, of course they want to win it, but they've got one eye on the semis, as we've seen from the lineup. And they also might have noticed, if you look at it, Mike, that North Carolina Courage lost to Angel City 2-1 last night. They're going to be playing them in the semifinals. Maybe they took their eye off the ball as well. Ended up losing the opening game. So for Kansas City Current, have they taken too big a gamble by leaving out some of their top players?
Well, Portland is off and running inside 2 minutes. It's Weaver down the middle. That's a corner 1 for the Thorns. Janine Becky essentially thrown straight into the fire, just arrived and went the distance a week ago with so many players dealing with COVID protocols. A whole nother gear, according to Coach Wilkinson, that Becky will attain, former compatriots in the Canadian national team. Klingenberg set to put this in play for the Thorns. That'll fly over Hubley and come to Becky. Becky right at Franch.
Well, Becky knew where the goal was, didn't she? Straight away, she brings that down, gets it on her left foot, lines up the shot, gets it at the goalkeeper. Of course, she wants to put it either side of AD to get her to work a little bit, so it was comfortable for the Kansas City current goalkeeper. But I think for all Portland Thorns fans, when they see the fact that she was straight on goal with that strike, that's what they're going to enjoy.
Rodriguez put under pressure by Cuica. Admittedly, for this Portland side, they do have the ambition to be able to be flexible in terms of their shape. They go back to a 3 here to open up the year. You've got Becky Sauerbrunn set to come back hopefully sooner than later. Suddenly you've got a wealth of center back riches, and you've got players in Klingenberg and Cuica so well equipped to get up and down the line. Those 6 Challenge Cup games allowed a lot of these teams to test the waters, different shapes, different ideas. For a lot of new coaches, chance to implement what they're actually trying to execute.
Yeah, absolutely. You can test other teams out. You can play around with your own options. And I think for Portland Thorns, they would have fancied getting at least a draw against Angel City, but for the COVID issues. And that makes a big difference to the start of the season. Imagine now if they're in the semi-finals, a possibility of silverware. Instead, they're now facing, as we mentioned, 2 losses in 3, the other loss being to OL Reign, which, okay, it's fair enough. They're such a good side. You can lose that, but you don't want to get onto a bad run. And as we mentioned, a couple of players are maybe not fully over the COVID protocols as yet. So again, massive match for this Portland side. And it's not often you say that about a team that has been so successful.
Coffey and Sinclair protesting that call and eventually won the referee over. Good slide in from Ball to deny Weaver. Ball having played in Portland for 2 seasons, 2018-2019, and a corner to come for the Thorns, although a player down here for Kansas City.
Taking a while to get up off the turf there. It must have been a heavy fall. And that's Weinbrenner, who's done really well coming into the team. Youngster at 22, just out of college, and really has impressed in her short time playing in this Kansas City current team.
This is off the training ground. Ball knotted out to Bennett, nearly overtaken by Nally. Found a bit of space out here, but it's short-lived. Cuica took it away. Becky on the overlap. That header steered over the end line.
Good early pressure from the home side, Portland Thorns. They look positive. Look, there's a short corner on. They're very slow to get out there, Kansas City.
Early from Becky, and it's winding its way to Franch.
That surprised me, that 2-on-1 at the corner there. That's very lazy defending from the current, and you would have thought the Challenge Cup games would have got them into the groove already for this season. I just wonder if it's the changes that maybe players are not quite sure what their role is at set pieces, but you can see it's a very positive start for Portland Thorns so far. And by the way, never lost to Kansas City current. Last season, 3 wins and a draw, which is the only matches to date. So playing at home with that sort of record behind you, you would think that most Portland Thorns fans would be fairly confident at the start of this match.
Rodriguez overtaken, but back through Cuica. The slick nutmeg. And Menges sends it out the other way. Ball pinged forward for Portland. Rodriguez striding through, finds Sinclair, denied by Weaver. Morgan Weaver opens the regular season on the right note for the Portland Thorns.
That's a good start for Portland Thorns. We've discussed how they've been on the front foot looking for opportunities here. Little bit of space opens up after that header. Just drops to Rocky Rodriguez. She puts in Sinclair, who gets the shot. Eddie French does really well to make the save, but you've got to give Morgan Weaver credit for being in the right place at the right time to tuck that one in the back of the net, and a good move all round. Lovely layup header, beautiful ball from Rocky Rodriguez, the shot from Sinclair, the finish from Morgan Weaver, and Morgan Weaver rather, and they are up and running as expected. They've been on the front foot. This is what they deserve from their early pressure. Portland Thorns ahead.
Comes just the 8th minute. And a lot of credit for really showing up and putting in a good effort, good shift against Angel City from Rian Wilkinson and the staff. Speaking about Weaver this week. And, you know, there's some of these young players right now for Portland. They feel like they're just scratching the surface, and that's scary to think about. In the case of Weaver and Smith, top 2 picks in an NWSL draft 3 years ago.
That's what you have to keep doing, is building for the future, getting these young players to come through the system. I mentioned Kansas City Current also have young players who've been impressive. I mentioned Elise Bennett up front at 22. She's super exciting, and Curran's 22, Izzy Rodriguez 23. But your mention of Portland, Morgan Weaver at 24 is a really exciting player. It's so quick to pick up that opportunity and knock that one straight into the back of the net. That'll just settle everyone down after the tough result against Angel City. This is exactly what Portland Thorns needed.
Coffee threading Weaver ahead. Ball arrives. Drops in. Becky will go to work.
You know, it was very impressive when we spoke to Rian Wilkinson is, yes, there were a lot of COVID issues around the Angel City loss, but she said, you know what, no excuses. We trained, yes, it was difficult. Making all the changes was difficult, but we're not one of those teams that looks for excuses. And I thought that was a very strong statement, is we will do our best under all circumstances.
And to a certain extent, we had to bring that up. She didn't offer training was different, meetings were different. That was something we sort of felt was neglected in the run of that game, how a COVID outbreak can change your entire week of preparation for all the players that are still available, much less the loss of the ones that weren't.
Yeah, and not just the players, the coach as well herself picked up the COVID bug. So it was a tough week all round. And, you know, football will bring you those problems. They'll bring you the ups and downs. And she just says, you know what, we deal with it. And it must have been a big blow. You're looking at Angel City thinking a draw gets us into the semi-finals. It's where Portland Thorns would expect their team to be because they know how good they are. When that happens and it's outside of your control, it can knock your confidence. But you can see already, this is a Thorns side that's on the attack, that know how good they are at Providence Park, and they're showing it already.
Becky running through. Paul just leapt up over her foot. And to follow up on that point, Rian Wilkinson said in hindsight probably would not have been in contact with the assistant coach down on the field. And awareness that not being in the moment in hindsight probably didn't add as much as she otherwise would from the field itself. And regretted that to an extent. But also gave a tremendous amount of respect to Angel City, who we quickly found out last night came to play at the bank. A sellout pink carpet extravaganza all the way down to French.
Yep, they got a 3rd-minute lead. We just see a bit of an injury problem.
And at first glance,
that's not
really
good, is it?
Doesn't look good. No. Mallory Weber who did spend 4 years in Portland previously. If you can see the forest through the trees, you can see the Kansas City staff hard at work, led by Matt Potter. See if we can get another look here. Just slips down, non-contact.
That's not good. Whenever you see a player go down that's not in a tackle and grasp a knee or an ankle, you do start to worry, because those are very intricate parts of the body as for a footballer. And I've experienced that. My career ended by a knee injury, and it was innocuous. No one even near me. Just went to dive for a ball, got my foot caught in a hole in the ground and twisted, and that was it. Cartilages torn and out. So really keeping fingers crossed that there's nothing more than just a little twist to this. Always horrible to see.
A national champion at Penn State, and the good times kept rolling. That was 2015. Won the Shield in 16. The NWSL championship in 17. See the athletic training staff radioing over to the bench. And you do hope, for Weber's sake, perhaps more so than the team's sake, she's able to return, but certainly doesn't look good at present. An injury here in the first quarter hour of this regular season.
You can see both coaches taking the opportunity just to talk to the players, go through a few things. Matt Potter there perhaps discussing how to tighten things up. They've been on the back foot in these first 15 minutes, and yeah, being helped off the pitch, Mallory Weber, and we really do wish her a speedy recovery. Just hope it's more bruising than anything else.
Been in this league going back to 2016 in that run with the Thorns, and then on to Utah, and made the move with the franchise. You can see Klingenberg, former teammate, going to check on Mallory Weber, and a lot of players trying to offer some positive vibes in this moment. Weber gets a standing ovation. Weaver, the opening goal back in the 8th minute of play. And this injury came about 2 minutes ago.
Applause from the crowd, as you mentioned. I think they all can see that this is not just a normal little bump or bruise, and they're sending their best wishes through their applause. And now a chance for Matt Potter to make the substitution.
It would be easy to look at really either of these teams and their success or lack thereof in any given game and lose track of the number of significant players that aren't in the equation right now for either side. Sauerbrunn and Dunn most notably for Portland, although Dunn's got a new broadcast gig from last week that we'll talk about at halftime. But if you look at Kansas City, Mace, Mewis, Lagarzo, Lynn Williams. Enormous losses for this current side, and Weber is one of the glue players. They can afford to lose her as well.
Those are some big names. Sam Mewis, Lynn Williams, huge names. I think JC Johnson's there amongst them. You mentioned Haley Mace. A lot of players, but they have options on the bench as well if they do need to shuffle things around, do current.
You and I were looking at the bench pregame. Usually you can get a pretty good idea of where the numbers are, the injuries and depth, based on how many goalkeepers are in a squad. They did carry 2 reserve goalkeepers. Mace did travel but was unavailable for the game for Kansas City. Alex Luera has walked over to the 4th official. That would be the apparent change in a moment's time. All the while, it's Kuika for Portland. Hubley. Over to Sinclair.
Just probing around the edge of the box here. Portland just looking for a little gap, little opportunity for a shot, or maybe a little quick 1-2.
Well, there's the gap, and it's Coffey off a ball. Still for Weaver. Kuika extends down the line from the edge of the 18. Whips this all the way through. Finds Rocky Rodriguez on the other side. The danger continues. Referee had a long look. And it comes over to McCain, but not before the slide and the foul from Coffey.
It was a tough tackle. Two bodies coming together really, really hard as we see Luera coming onto the pitch to replace Mallory Webber. By the way, the last match, Luera's goal was an absolute golazo against Chicago Red Stars from all of 25, 26 yards out near the top corner. She can strike a ball. And that's something for Portland Thorns to keep in mind.
We asked Matt Potter whether or not he knew that Luera had that in her. Told us, always said she was a goal scorer, but to do that in a game, goodness.
What a strike. He said he'd seen her do it in training, and as you say, had challenged her to do it in a game. Well, she did it last game. What a finish.
There's Sinclair. Scored an equalizing penalty in the first game in NWSL history. Leading Weaver with an opening. And the service behind Becky. Still for Klingenberg. Rodriguez. And there's the turn. Becky kept alive Coffey and overcooked that.
Kansas City are taking a lot of pressure at the moment. Those white shirts are getting back in numbers. Just trying to stem the tide that Portland Thorns have put them under some big pressure. They just need to get the ball on amongst themselves. 80 French will know that. Just to settle things down, get on the ball, knock it around, get themselves back into this game. See, losing possession a little bit cheaply there, and what happens is you don't get much time on the ball. The more time Portland Thorns get in, the more they're comfortable they feel, and so it's a problematic start for Kansas City current.
20 minutes gone, and Portland through Morgan Weaver the go-ahead to begin this NWSL regular season. Becky able to get that by ball, but certainly not French.
Yeah, optimistic, that strike. It was a quick snapshot. If that goes in, it's going to be a fantastic goal. But again, it just shows you that she has one thing on mind, Janine Becky. That's just to get the shot on target. And I think she's going to be an exciting addition to this Thorns outfit.
Bouncing ball, Bennett. Menges is there.
This is better from Kansas City. Well, as I say, the kiss of death, but at least they've managed to keep possession. Just get some time on the ball, knock it around, get a feel for it, quieten the crowd perhaps in the process.
Edmonds for Kansas City. Slashed in Bixby's direction. It was Bixby taking the next step beginning at the 2020 Challenge Cup that ultimately gave this Portland side a goalkeeping problem. In the sense, too many good goalkeepers and not enough shirts on any given day. So French sent to Kansas City. This back to French. Did well to handle that. But for French, chance to go back home. Oklahoma State alum from the state of Kansas.
And I think going back to last season, from the moment 80 French arrived, that was when Kansas City's season started to turn for the better. It wasn't just her, but it was around that time that she just solidified the defense, and bit by bit they started picking up some decent results.
Mace, Hamilton, they actually really finished the season on quite the uptrend. And while they didn't have a winning streak at any point last year, they hadn't won a road game. You would say, in theory, the best was yet to come.
She was a crucial part of that, 80. Just coming in and settling down that defense and giving a sense of belief, allowing the midfielders to push forward a little bit more and not constantly worry about what was happening behind them.
Bennett trying to work off Del Fava. In goes Kuika. Hasn't been a lot of free space conceded by Portland at this stage.
They've been very solid, very impressive, and still got a couple of impactful players on the bench should they need them in Sophia Smith and Hina Singita.
Weaver apparently stayed on side. Clever touch by Rodriguez, and now through. Weaver circles this back. Kuika caught on the wrong foot, trying to track back and get it. And a foul from Hubley.
Again, they look dangerous on the attack, Portland. Can't say the same for Kansas City as yet. I don't think Bixby's had a single save to make. But every time you get Portland on the attack, you can see opportunities, you can see options for them, bodies pushing forward. So far, you've got to be quite hopeful if you're a Portland Thorns fan that this is going to be a happy day for Kansas City Current. So far, nothing but challenges. Doesn't help when you lose a player that early in the game in Mallory Weber.
Good thievery there by Labonta. Replaced at the quarter-hour mark, Weber. Good step in by Nally. Had an outstanding Challenge Cup. Del Fava among those helping to win it back. And the flick through didn't find McCain. Weinbrenner sneaking in there. To your point, for 41st overall pick. You hope at some point player at that stage of the draft will pan out, much less from day one.
Yeah, Matt Potter must be very, very happy with Jenna Weinbrenner. She's been superb. But again, at 22, Alex Luera 22, Izzy Rodriguez 23, Chardonnay Curran 22, Kate Del Fava 23. I mean, this is a very, very young side Kansas City are putting together. And the two up front, Addie McCain and Elise Bennett, both 22.
Bixby gave it away. Kansas City trying to take advantage. And it didn't go for Bennett. Bixby able to make herself big and alleviate the stress.
That's the first chance they've had, and that's courtesy of the goalkeeper trying to be a little bit too cute, playing out the back. Always risky, and Bennett nearly having a chance. Del Fava just picking up that ball and giving it to Bennett, and Bennett just scooping it wide.
When you played at United, did they ever ask you to play with your feet?
No, well, back in those days you wouldn't. You weren't good enough to.
Right.
The reason you're a goalkeeper is you can't use your feet. But even today, and just a personal opinion, other goalkeeper coaches will tell you different, but I think keepers take way too many risks out the back. That's the risk-reward thing for me isn't there, because if you get turnover ball there, you're in big trouble. They're right on either in your box or on the edge of your box.
Really good first touch, and the pressure continues, but Franch launches.
See, that's what I like, Eddie Franch. Get it up the pitch. Get it away from the trouble area.
Ball mustered away from Sinclair.
We were talking a little bit earlier on. We never finished the topic of North Carolina Courage losing last night 2-1, and they have a semi-final. And again, the danger is you just sense that if you try and manage both games, in other words, if you're thinking ahead, which perhaps Matt Potter's doing by leaving a couple of crucial players on the bench, such as Desiree Scott, Victoria Pickett, Kristen Hamilton, you can get caught between winning neither, and a loss last night for North Carolina Courage against Angel City is not the best way to start off the new season.
And conceding as early as they did was likely quite the shock to the system.
Yeah, 3rd and 13th minute, they were 2-0 down. Dabinya got one back in the 51st. But Angel City getting stronger and stronger as the Challenge Cup went on. So they're not going to be a pushover this season, you wouldn't have thought.
Kept here after a difficult challenge in Becky. I do have some question as to whether or not our concept of the league this year at this early point has been warped by the fact that there are 4-team divisions in the Challenge Cup. It's almost impossible to say, where does the Central stand against the East versus the West?
Yeah, and many of these teams haven't played against each other. For example, these two here in different divisions. So there's some teams you will have played against twice and others you haven't played against at all. But I think it's been an exciting Challenge Cup. I've really enjoyed it. There's been some really good football, and great to see San Diego Wave and Angel City get up and running and put in a couple of decent performances. I think it augurs very well for a great season this year in the NWSL.
Biggest season yet.
Absolutely. And some wonderful players and great franchises and fantastic owners putting big money into it and building stadiums. It really is such an exciting time for the NWSL.
This is Bennett. Goes 1v1. McCain returns for Labonta. Running as if it's 2013. Sinclair. Becky. They found the opposite side with Klingenberg sprinting into the attack. Becky wanted this early. Ball for Becky. Bounces all the way through past Franch and out.
That was so close. A fantastic near post run, and what a ball in there from Klingenberg. Have a look. Goes out wide, picks her spot, looks up, measures it, puts it in. Becky near post gets it and just doesn't quite get enough on it. Maybe Adie Franch would have got there, who's to know. But what a good run. What a fantastic opportunity. And once again, Kansas City struggling to defend at the back.
Ball driven forward for Becky again, and Franch will come over. It wasn't meant by a slight by any coach that I've heard it from, in part because you listen to Matt Potter and you get the same sense. Kansas City right now, attacking-wise, trying to be more than the sum of its parts. And a lot of their goal creation in that Challenge Cup came from team goals, from effort goals, and a lot of times goals in the final 15 minutes that changed the complexion of the result altogether.
Yeah, I think we counted, what was it, 4 goals after the 75th minute?
That changed the result, either moved them into a level position or took them from a draw to a win.
Which is worth bearing in mind if you're a Portland Thorns fan, that this is a Kansas City current team that keeps playing right to the death, so don't assume anything. And certainly if they bring on Desiree Scott and Victoria Pickett and Kristen Hamilton in the second half, that could certainly change the balance of this match.
Conversely, you could argue if you bring Sagita and Smith off the bench, you could make a similar claim.
Yes, this is also very true.
Up for Weaver. That header down fell to Weaver a second time. Weaver with a blast. What a save by Franch. That should look real familiar at Providence Park. It's the latest Save of the Week nominee.
Yeah, Morgan Weaver doing so well, not giving up. She's on her own up there. Have a look at her on her own. She's trying to keep the ball close to her. She puts the pressure on, gets the ball, and then from a very tight angle. This is a great strike, left foot, and brings out a fantastic save from Eddie French. Have a look there. French having to raise her right arm up high and very, very quick to make that save.
The corner for Portland. Coffey's blast deflects upward. And driven away by Weinbrenner.
Again, we're looking at all the highlights. It's all Portland going forward, except for the one Bixby trying to be a midfield maestro, trying to play out the back. Was the only chance Kansas City have had, and that wasn't of their own doing. That was courtesy of the keeper, Bella Bixby.
Ball rolled back for Sinclair. Ball going stride for stride, laid off. Klingenberg kept it moving, and now across to Kuika. To the back post. Sinclair is there! Same as it ever was! Year number 10 starts the same as year number 1 for Christine Sinclair.
Fantastic pressure there from Portland Thorns. Nothing that Eddie French can do about that. The ball in was a good ball in. There was a challenge that dropped for Christine Sinclair, and she smashes that into the back of the net in style. But it's this probing. Look at the number of there. Go wide. Lovely ball in here. Beautiful ball in. The far post, the challenge, the ball drops. Christine Sinclair's quick. The end of it. Morgan Weaver for the challenge there at the post, and for Kuika for the cross. And the pure pressure from the home side. The greatest opportunity finished off in style by the evergreen Christine Sinclair.
One goal in the Challenge Cup, and now goal number 55 in NWSL regular season play. A pretty wicked hop out of Bixby. My favorite Sinclair stat to explain the longevity would be 55 now goals, third most in league history. Never once more than 9 in a single season. And certainly international duty has played a role. Seen her away with Canada. But it's been a consistent role within this Portland organization from literally day one.
Now that's brilliant. To have that consistency means not only are you a fantastic player, but you've looked after your body well, you've stayed fit, you've managed to mold with different players and fit in with different systems, and it just says everything about what a fantastic professional player Christine Sinclair is. At 38 years of age, to keep this fit and be this relevant, brilliant.
And adding new trophies to the mantle, the international level still, as if there was anything left to win. Debuted for Canada in 2000 as a 16-year-old, amassing over 300 caps and approaching 200 goals. An unparalleled plateau that could be in Sinclair's not too distant future. One of 6 to be involved all 10 years of the league. Fishlock, Barnes, Rapinoe, Motts, and Huster make that claim as well.
And I think credit to each one of those players for exactly the same reasons. The longevity, the looking after their bodies, the staying fit, working with different coaches, different players, all speaks to how every one of them top-class professionals.
Meanwhile, if you're Rian Wilkinson, we got the feeling about 3 halves of play going back to the San Diego game. They were not satisfactory for this staff or for the players. You would argue through 37 minutes, they have far and away dominated this performance.
Oh, absolutely. On the front foot the entire match. Morgan Weaver's been a big part of that. She's played really well in this first half as far as I'm concerned. For Kansas City Current and Matt Potter, there's some question marks here about what to do to turn this around, because they have been outplayed. But as we've mentioned a few times, they have some good options off the bench. Do they bring them on at some stage early in the second half? Do they play a different system? How do they get themselves back in the match, Kansas City? because you certainly want to have a better second half than this going into Wednesday's semi-final.
Are you one who buys into the concept of cup form and league form?
Difficult to say. Depends on circumstances. I'm one of those who buys into one match at a time. If you look too far ahead, not that Matt Potter is, he might just be resting players for other reasons. He might just simply be rotating as managers do all the time. But I tend to think win one match and then sit down and say, right, who's fit, who's available, what's the next match? But again, that's easier to say. We're not privy to exactly how the players are feeling, what Desiree Scott, Victoria Pickett, Kristen Hamilton, how they feel about it, what they want to do. There's a lot of other factors taken into account. But as with North Carolina coverage last night, I think if you have one eye on a match coming up and you rest too many players, you can end up falling between everything and not getting anything you want out of it.
And should Kansas City find their way through that home match on Wednesday night, the semifinal, see either Washington or OL Reign, the 1 or the 4 seed on the back end of that. Your prize for a great 6 games of effort is this back pass. Ran a pretty dangerous tightrope. The prize being potentially 3 games in 7 days.
Yeah, but when we spoke to Matt Potter about it, he was like, this is what the ownership want. They want us to be in all the competitions, and I'm going to try and deliver for them. So credit to Matt Potter.
Kuika! That had a ton of knuckle on it, and it hung up there for a while.
I think it might have taken a little deflection on the way, because it did. It varied in the air way too much for anyone having a strike. Let's have a look and see if it does come off one of the defenders on the way through. Yeah, there we go. Comes off the back of Izzy Rodriguez. But never nice for a goalkeeper when the ball takes a whole different trajectory. And Adi Franch doing well there.
For a moment, I thought it was my lacking depth perception, as was the case with the goal that wasn't between Portland and Angel City last week. The offside flag unseen. Apologies continue from this seat. This is Bennett trying to sneak one back here in the final 5 minutes of this opening half in Portland. Rodriguez. Fava waited for it. Ball. And reversed awkwardly by Rodriguez.
Just looking at Izzy Rodriguez last match against Chicago Red Stars, she was up and down that left-hand side. She was in the attack, putting balls into the box. We've hardly seen her move into Portland's half. She's been defending most of the time, and that's when your wing backs are pegged back and they can't get forward. You lose a lot of your attacking options, and I think that's something that Matt Potter will try and rectify in the halftime break.
And what's really difficult when you get pinned back by Klingenberg and Kuika is they're downhill. It's very difficult to change that momentum in a game, isn't it?
It is, and you're up against 2 very, very good wing backs, as you mentioned, in Kuika and Klingenberg. So if they're coming at you the whole time, it's your first job is to defend. Only when you can get your defensive duties done can you then attack, and they haven't been able to do that in this first half. Have Kansas City. Of course, another 45 minutes and they could turn things around, but at 2-0 down away from home at Providence Park, not going to be easy.
Most games ever on an opening weekend for the regular season of the NWSL this weekend. This is just the beginning of a very busy next 36 or so hours. Down the line, Coffey closed it.
This is not going to bother Portland Thorns too much if Kansas City just playing 30, 40 yards out and away from goal. They need to get a little bit closer, as we saw Portland Thorns doing, around the fringes of the box and try and get some crosses in. This is better.
Labonta came off the shoulder, top of the arm of Nally, and now Klingenberg has gone to ground.
There's a little moment there with Lola Bonte where she turns her body, and yeah, it's what she's saying. It was a straight leg, and it's a dangerous tackle the way it looked. And that's the conversation. If the referee had seen this close up, we get the advantage of slow motion. But look at Labonte just turn her body then. I think she just goes for the ball and just slides her foot over the top. Obviously, there was no intention to do that, but Klingenberg making the point that it could have been seen as a very dangerous tackle.
From that moment, about 90 seconds remaining before stoppage time, McCain off the corner for Kansas City. Floated upward, take a deflection to the backside. They chant PTFC here in Portland. And at halftime, we'll tell you about PTFC for Peace, which occurred on Wednesday. Tell you what's been going on in the Rose City. All the while, Kansas City will get another set piece here to try and make something of this. Edmonds is the one behind the ball, stewing alongside Izzy Rodriguez.
It'll be a good time to score just before halftime to get themselves back in the match. Decent ball into the box that the taller players try and get on the end of it.
Will be Edmonds, and it is a dangerous ball. Figuratively and literally, a dangerous Elizabeth ball attacking the header.
Yeah, she does well there, Elizabeth Ball, to get on the end of this. And for a second, you think that's going top corner. She gets ahead, gets a good direction, but just not quite close enough, and just lost a little bit of power in the header as well. Something at least for Matt Potter to get excited about. He had nothing in the first half except that one moment then. Maybe they can try and produce a little bit more in the second half of a similar nature.
We have approached stoppage time. 3 added minutes. Portland off and running. 2 goals up here on Twitch. It's on Twitch that the international audience has been watching now for years. A handful of games domestically in the U.S. Good from Becky. Little dip backward. The step forward and through. It's Coffey at the feet of a leaning 80 French.
And they had so many numbers forward there, Portland Thorns. There were 6 or 7 of them on the edge of that box, all looking to find the gap. That seems to be their strength. Look at those black shirts. They get forward in numbers. They stretch that defense. They're out wide. They're through the middle. And certainly Eddie French has had a reasonably busy first half.
Came down to midfield for Becky. For what it's worth, Rian Wilkinson once upon a time tried to comment in the chat during a NWSL game on Twitch. It wouldn't allow her to, had some kind of issue, figured that was a sign, never attempted to do so again. All the while you would think that Mark Parsons is probably somewhere, the former head coach here in Portland who led them to so many glorious moments, watching the same way Wilkinson did before she took over the head coaching job while Wilkinson was still over in Europe. This is French launching away.
Rian Wilkinson, the 4th head coach in the franchise history, but what a career she's had for Canada. Besides her coaching, her recent coaching in England and for the Great British team in the Olympics, her own career has been absolutely phenomenal.
And now jumping into one of the great jobs in the league, Rodriguez. French went down a little early. Ball bounced effectively right at her with another minute of stoppage to go.
That's a great franchise, but like all soccer clubs, if you're not winning, you're in trouble. The good news for Rian Wilkinson is she's winning 2-0 here in front of a home crowd who expects. And I'm sure she'll be very happy with that. She'll be worried that the team let her go second half. So I'm sure her halftime chat's going to be about keeping the same pressure on, getting those numbers forward the way they have, getting shots on target and getting a third and a fourth and wrapping this up. Obviously, for Matt Potter, it's exactly the opposite. It's about getting back in the game for Kansas City, but it's how they're going to do it. And I really do feel he will need to bring a few players off the bench. He's impact players, and Desiree Scott being one of those.
A couple players on the last defender's shoulder there for Portland. This will go back to French, and this may well send us to halftime. Portland Thorns are off and running to begin this regular season. Barely, if any, foot wrong in that first 45.
And Morgan Weaver, one of those who I thought was absolutely fabulous in that first half, and it's a problem for Kansas City because it's only going to get tougher second half, you would think, at Providence Park. So let's see what Matt Potter and his players can pull out the bag here at halftime.
Weaver and Sinclair, new and vintage Portland Thorns scorers. We've got plenty coming up at halftime, including a look back at PTFC for peace here on Twitch. One of the great venues in American soccer, and the NWSL opens up yet another season at venerable Providence Park. Thorns with a 2-0 lead, Sinclair and Weaver on the score sheet. Coming up on Wednesday, Jen, Ellie, Marissa, JP, Lori, and everybody at home get to have all the fun the Challenge Cup semifinals lay ahead.
It's down to 4 teams in the 2022 NWSL Challenge Cup, and there are no shortage of intriguing storylines. The top-seeded OL Reign are coming into the semi-finals clicking on all cylinders and are ready to chase after their first Challenge Cup trophy in franchise history.
Balser, shot, goal!
Standing in OL Reign's way will be the Washington Spirit, who are coming in off their first NWSL Championship as an organisation, but were on the verge of missing out on the postseason before Ashley Hatch provided some late-game magic.
Hatch to tie it, yes!
The Kansas City Current, who finished in last place in the regular season, have had a remarkable turnaround in the Challenge Cup and took the Central Division in convincing fashion.
Something coming here. Shot from distance! Oh, what a goal!
The opponent for the Current will be the North Carolina Courage, who are no stranger to playoff success and are in position to make another run at a title.
Berkeley takes the shot, it's a beauty! Come on!
The margin for error is over. Who will advance to the 2022 NWSL Challenge Cup Championship? Tune in to CBS Sports Network and Paramount Plus to find out.
Kansas City Current looking for their first ever result against the Thorns. They look for that first win. So far, it's been a real struggle. Portland looks outstanding. They're up 2-0. Watching live on Twitch. Mike Watts, Gary Bailey. Here we go. First half highlights. And for Portland, didn't take very long for them to shake off any cobwebs from a disappointing conclusion to the Challenge Cup. The opening goal, Sinclair, saved by Francis Weaver.
Yeah, good finish there from Weaver in the right place at the right time, but give Rocky Rodriguez their credit. Her little ball through that sets up Sinclair for the shot, and then Morgan Weaver's in the right place, tucks it up. Yeah, everyone's happy, including coach Rian Wilkinson.
This is the one real mistake for Portland in the first half.
Bixby getting a little bit too cute, and it was the only chance that Kansas City really had there. And credit to Del Fava for winning the ball, passes it to Bennett, who just can't get it past the keeper.
And then for Christine Sinclair, it's time to continue giving her roses. It's Kuika sending this across. Ball bounces free. There's Sink.
Sinclair, fantastic finish, but credit also to Morgan Weaver at the far post. Look at her battling. It's her battling that drops the ball perfectly for Sinclair. And did she buried it? And the coach is more than delighted.
Here's a look at the first half stats. That's pretty telling.
13 shots to 2. He's got a massive problem, Matt Potter. He's got to turn this around. 10 shots on goal to 0. Again, it just shows you how dominant Portland Thorns have been and how happy Rian Wilkinson must be. Now wait to see what clever ideas Matt Potter and his team are going to come up with second half, because they have to come up with something.
They get to eat real food. We're just eating cough drops over here. We talk about PTFC for Peace when we return on Twitch.
Ще вмерла Україна, і слава і воля.
The Portland Thorns versus the Portland Timbers, kind of. PTFC for Peace. A co-ed match played on Wednesday night, raised over $500,000 for UNICEF to help the children of Ukraine. It finished Team Yellow 4, Team Blue 3. And while Timbers voice Jake Zivin, Crystal Dunn, Liam Ridgewell, and Karina LeBlanc offered sublime commentary, it wasn't really about the win or the loss. Even Gio Savarese ended up with what Rian Wilkinson calls a terrible precedent, adding an assist late. The referee for that game was a Ukrainian immigrant. His family's still there. There's a great article from Brian Costello on the Timbers and Thorns website about that. But it's ultimately about the money that they raised and the support that was garnered to try and bring some measure of peace and comfort to those who've lost so much in the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. And there's still an auction going on. The pennants that were exchanged, the jerseys, signed memorabilia, cleats from that game. The number will continue to rise, Gary, but if there's an organization that over the course of this league's history has most put itself out there for issues both local and international, it's the Thorns, and you give them a lot of credit in a game week for both organizations coming together to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's what Rian Wilkinson said. She said she was so impressed. By the way, as we just see a change, Sophia Smith, we'll mention that in a moment, but she said she was so impressed by the amount of work that went in, and she said when you saw the event, it was just a wonderful reminder of the beauty of the game, and of course the money raised has been absolutely well worthwhile.
And the support in the venue was enthralling. It was a really great job by everyone involved with the Thorns and the Timbers organization. And really thrilling commentary. I told Rian Wilkinson if Crystal Dunn decides to hang him up some point down the line, jump into the commentary game. I think it would be a really solid second career. All the while, changes here for Portland. You see Becky comes off after 45 minutes. In comes, to your earlier point, Sophia Smith, who was just glorious in that Challenge Cup, and Hina Sagita in as well. You do get the feeling that Rian Wilkinson feels for Sagita, sky the limit coming into this club.
Yeah, she's very excited about what Sagita can do for the club going forward, and got many years ahead of her, as has Sophia Smith. And Smith, 3 goals, 18 shots, 7 on target in the Challenge Cup. So she really has made an impact. Now there's a change as well, the one that we thought we would see, Desiree Scott coming on, much needed in that Kansas City midfield.
Replaces Addie McCain, who was playing higher up in that first half. Ball across for Kansas City and an early whistle.
Interesting, Matt Potter, when he spoke to us and he talked about Desiree Scott, he said, I knew she was a good player. We've played against her. We've had to mark her. He said, but only when you work with her day in and day out, you realize what an incredibly fabulous player she is. So no wonder he wants to get her on now to see if she can help turn this around for Kansas City Current.
Throw coming for Klingenberg. And there's the savvy Sagita laying this back. Both Sagita and Smith were in the availability report a week ago among the 7 players and staff that were not with the group against Angel City due to COVID protocols. Kuika turned around a bit, and there's Sinclair leading the way, but a nice theft by Labonta.
It's interesting for the Portland Thorns to make 2 switches at half-time. Normally they wait sort of around the 55th minute.
Ball ahead for Weaver, and French got there a step or two before the dynamic attacking player who's got the goal back in the 8th minute that put Portland ahead.
Yeah, keeper doing well to read that, because Weaver once again a real threat up front. Been very impressed with her, but 2 changes at halftime. Normally coaches wait till 60th minute or thereabouts, but interesting for the Thorns. They've had 22 players feature in the Challenge Cup, with 19 players earning at least 1 start. That shows you that they have been mixing it up and trying to keep everybody fresh and free from any physical, over exertions and strains. Only 2 players to start all 6 were Emily Menges and Kelly Hubley. So coach Rian Wilkinson really getting the players used to these constant changes, and maybe that is the way to deal with a long, hard season, is to get the players used to the changes so they don't feel that it's difficult to go from playing next to one person to somebody else, to changing the style of play. More and more these days we see rotations as part of everyday decision making by coaches.
And lest we forget, as Kansas City steps into the final third, Labonta trying to thread through. You've got that ever-present international duty. Every coach would love to have 18, 20 full international players on their roster, but it's not quite so simple. With CONCACAF W coming up this year, it's going to have pretty hefty implications. And continuing play over in Europe. This is a Thorns side that's going to be among the most hit by international duty yet again. And you have to be ready for that.
Yep, you absolutely do. And the 2 players have come on as we see this pass back, and Eddie French is dealing with it. But interesting that Rian Wilkinson said the 2 players that she thinks are key for this season are exactly the same 2 players she just brought on. Sophia Smith, who she believes will improve hugely, and Hida Sugita.
Smith! Oh, it's brilliant! A player for all seasons jumps into the regular season with a bang. 3-0 Portland.
Well, just as we were talking up Sophia Smith and saying how much her coach thinks there's so much more to come, she bangs one in the top corner. Eddie French with no chance there whatsoever. The goalkeeper just staring out saying, what can I do? How do I stop that? Saluting the crowd as she should do, but Klingenberg here just on the edge of the box looking for the opportunity, plays it wide, a turn. But look at this strike. Doesn't even try and set it up. It bounces, sees that she's got a chance and hits it on the half volley. Eddie French does get a hand to it, but can't keep it out the back of the net. And everybody salutes Sophia Smith.
51st minute for the leader in shots on target last year. To the right. Surely now they're moving back to the left. The supporters.
Wow, what do you do if you're Kansas City? You come out the second half, you make your change, and you think, all right, Desiree Scott's on, maybe we can get back in this game. Bang, you're 3-0 down, and now you do have a mountain to climb.
Was a coach, we asked, what do you do if you're facing Sophia Smith to try and slow her down? The answer was pray the night before. We are most definitely witnessing player blossoming in front of our eyes into a regular in the national team. Ball held up at midfield and will squeeze back into the Kansas City attacking half.
Let's not forget, this is a Kansas City side that finished top of their group in the Challenge Cup. They're a very good side. Yes, 1 or 2 players on the bench they could have started.
Ball skip away from Bennett, and Kuika will range over.
They've been in great form, Kansas City. 4 wins out of 6 and a draw. 10 goals, 4-7 against. So this shows you what a good performance this is from Portland Thorns.
Smith for Weaver. It was a lot easier for French when she was defending the other goal.
Weaver again being a threat there. A fantastic play. A lot of her work goes unnoticed, as we mentioned with the Sinclair goal. It was Morgan Weaver's challenge that forced the ball to be dropped, so Sinclair could pounce on it. Weaver scored the first in the right place at the right time to tap in after Sinclair had the initial shot. So the two of them working really well together up front. And now you chuck in Sophia Smith.
We did make mention of that in the first half. There's some changes that the Current could make, but this is not a Thorns side lacking depth on the day with the changes they had to their lineup.
Now you wonder, if you're Matt Potter, do you even bring on Victoria Pickett, Kristen Hamilton, to maybe say, look, this match is as good as done. We're not going to get much out of this. Why don't I keep them on ice until Wednesday in the semi-final against North Carolina Courage? Or maybe just give them a little run out for the last 10 minutes just to get their eye in.
Coming back to the ball, Weaver, Sinclair, now Smith, and the positive step through to knock it away from Alex Luera.
Crowd getting behind their side, as they should do when you get a performance like this.
Corner for the Thorns. There's Franch.
You look at a good goalkeeper like Eddie Franch, and she'll be really annoyed that 3 goals have gone past her, but I'm not sure she could have done anything. She saved the first one, and Morgan Weaver tapped in the rebound. The second one was blasted by Sinclair from all of 6 yards out, and then Sophia Smith stuck one in the top corner. So I think as a goalkeeper, he's got to hold your hands up and say, well, not much we can do to stop that going in.
Ball's blasted back into the Portland attacking half. Ball across, Weaver touched aside by Smith. They smell blood in the water, this Thorns side.
Morgan Weaver with a nice early ball in. That's what made that opportunity for Sophia Smith. Morgan Weaver lifted her head. Have a look when she gets here. She's looking up already. A glance over her shoulder. Glance again. Early ball. Doesn't mess about. Gets it into the danger area. Sophia Smith a little bit too past the near post. It was a very difficult angle to flick the ball back, but wonderful play up front again from the Thorns.
For what it's worth, Portland a perfect 3 wins from 3 matches in which Smith scored during the Challenge Cup. Was unavailable for that Angel City game.
Well, I guess most Portland fans will say you can make a 4 out of 4, because at 3-0 down, it would be a real surprise if Kansas City Current come back and got anything out of this match.
Well, they've had those late final 15-minute goals, but I'm not sure they've come up with 3 or 4 of them.
And not against Portland Thorns at Providence Park.
True enough. There was an awkward step there in midfield. What a ball through. The flag is up. This is offside. Well, now the flag's gone down on the far side. Flipped up by Smith. Taken by Weaver. Back towards Smith. Careens out. Picked up by Sinclair, but it will stop there. Well, a bit of an awkward run of events there.
Yeah, not quite sure what happened with the flag going up and then down again, but it's just wonderful play from Portland Thorns, and they're really relaxing and having fun. And just wonder when it came to Morgan Weaver, though, whether she could have hit it straight away. But Sophia Smith, wow, what an impact she's made. Just a few minutes she's been on there. Hit it straight away, because once you bring it under control, I know she's trying to set up Sophia Smith, but there was a chance there to have hit that straight away and forced the keeper into a save.
I'm not sure that's what the ref is saying.
A lengthy discussion here. I'm not quite sure it's necessary. Because there's a break in play. I was wondering why the referee was engaging in such a long discussion. There's Rian Wilkinson just going through a few points. I'm not quite sure what you say when your team's playing this well and they're 3-0 up. You just, you know, stick to the basics, keep doing what you're doing.
There are times where genuinely is very minor nits to pick. And it's been that kind of game so far. And Kansas City surely a bit frustrated, but only in game 7 under Matt Potter, they secured that semifinal cup Wednesday night. Should be a really special day in Kansas City.
Yeah, and a win against North Carolina Courage, and then maybe this match is forgotten, and something for the fans, especially in the city. What a great achievement. It would make the final. It's obviously a big if. Matt Potts would be hoping for that. They own so much money and backing, and be delighted by a Challenge Cup final appearance. So Wednesday night's turning out to be a huge night, and especially if this result holds or result similar, you want to bounce back with a good win as soon as possible.
Chardonnay Curran getting back onto the field. Bennett reaching the end line, floating that. Glancing blow sends it by Sinclair. Ball shadowing Smith. I'm not sure we've fully comprehended the audacity of pitchforking a ball 30 feet into the air over the defender and right onto Weaver's foot on that previous effort.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But the goal itself, just top corner from, there was no wind up for Sophia Smith. He just controlled it, and then on the half volley smacked it. I think most players would like to get under control, get themselves settled, and then hit it, but she just took one touch and bang, back of the net. That was just a wonderful strike.
Weaver undeterred, and now Klingenberg wide for Weaver. Good intervention, and further by Weinbrenner. Klingenberg wasn't there. Edmonds. Mentioned back in 2013, these two teams, at least these two cities, coming together for the first ever NWSL match. Back then it was FC Kansas City. This Kansas City Current bringing women's professional soccer back to KC a year ago. That was a year in which the top four, Western New York, FC KC, Portland, and Sky Blue, all finished within 2 points of one another. A three-way tie for first. Whatever chaos we think we've had in the last 8 regular seasons, not sure anything can match the wild nature of that. For what it's worth, with no true regular season Challenge Cup and Fall Series, we've got some like Laura Harvey saying, I've been in every regular season, wasn't here every year, but pulse driven down into the wide area. This will find Weaver. Dancing, delivering. Sagita was making the trailing run. Absolutely, Portland's having fun now.
Yeah, and they can do it 3-0. Even if Kansas City get one back, you've still got enough of a buffer. And that's, as a professional player, you do start to feel very comfortable at a 3-0. At 2-0 is more of a tricky one. At 2-0, it can easily, from 2-1, become a problem. At 3-0, should be pretty much home and hosed, as they say. But you're talking about how good Portland are. Winning the Shield last year, they made their 5th consecutive trip to the playoffs. 7th in 8 seasons, the most of any team. This has been an incredibly successful franchise, and when you look at Rian Wilkinson and what she's doing already, and the players they have, and Sophia Smith's impact, and the players they've brought in, there's no reason to believe that this season isn't going to be another fantastic season for Portland Thorns fans.
Coming off an impressive trophy haul a year ago. 3 trophies, including the WICC. That's Del Fava. Ball recovered by Portland, and Ball up to the task that time around. But Sagita helped to win it back. And Kuika navigating.
Again, I'd like to see Kansas City just do something in the last half an hour. Just make a fist of this. Try and have a go, because they're still defending. That Portland Thorns are still on top. I'm sure Matt Potter would like to see his team put in a decent last half an hour before the semi-final, because up until now they've been totally outplayed for 64 minutes or thereabouts.
Smith, contemplative, but the deflection leads it to Kansas City. Ball leading Curran. Edmonds trying to orchestrate the pressure out in front, and as a result, Nally will put this over the line. Changes are coming here. Hamilton and Pickett will come off the bench. Luera and Scott had come in previously. Scott came in at halftime, so there is still one window for Kansas City to make changes. Bennett comes off, and Lola Bonta has come off as well.
Well, now they're at full strength, you would think, Kansas City current, and let's see how they can fare in this last half an hour. As I said, you might not win the game, but you want to just be on the front foot a bit more, go into the semi-final on Wednesday with a lot more confidence, and they'll have that, Kansas City, if they can get hold of the ball and put Portland Thorns under a bit of pressure.
It's Hubley being attended to. Again, we mentioned it earlier, we're probably a bit guilty of it. We see athletic trainers and medical staffs around the league attending the players. Pierre Soubrier leading the group in Portland, but especially in the case of a bit of a COVID outbreak within the Thorns, a lot of credit not only for how they handled it once it occurred, but also all the mask mandates that they were able to, as a group, follow, the distance that they tried to put into meetings and training a week ago. Add that to all the injuries that come with a grueling season, or a grueling Challenge Cup as it may be. That's a quick tape job of the ankle.
I think they were tested every day, weren't they? So it's you know, constant testing, measuring, feedback, isolation, whatever the process is. And you're 100% right. The medical staff go unnoticed at most of these clubs, but they provide a massive, massive support to the players and to the management.
And Shots had a Thorns program that was on YouTube last year. 5 questions about Pierre to an assistant coach a year ago, and gosh, that was a fun little experience watching that back as I tried to effectively say Pierre's last name. I sent Katie, who's one of the greats in PR in the NWSL at Portland, a quick email today. Can you just confirm that I heard it right when Rian offered so much praise?
We had a little look at Sophia Smith there, and just looking at the stats with her and Kristen Hamilton, both have scored 4 goals in their last 5 appearances. So 2 strikers in absolutely blistering form.
Broke down in that instance from Curran after a nifty step by out to midfield.
Just assuming that Portland fans would love to have their openers at home, because this is the 5th time that Portland have opened the season at home. And assuming this result holds, it'll be the 5th straight win. So it's a lucky start to the season for the Thorns to be at home.
I would think the Thorns would argue nothing lucky about it.
Fair comment. I think Kansas City would say we'd rather not be away from home if these are the results we're going to get.
For what it's worth, last year was the 3rd instance in league history in which every home team was undefeated on the opening weekend of the season. And with Angel City's ruckus entrance into the regular season, Still 4 more to go. We'll find out if that tail holds. Seeking Weaver, recovered and floated forward by Scott. A little room here for the Curran at the end line. It's going to go over Hamilton, and Bixby will pick it out.
Bixby hasn't had much to do. In fact, by half-time, not a single save. 10 shots on target for the hosts, 0 for the visitors. So Bixby's been pretty much a spectator for most of this match. That's why I say, from a Kansas City point of view, yes, the chances are that this match is gone unless something amazing happens. But you want to end off on a high. You want to end off on a front foot. You don't want this to continue, because they have been totally outplayed and it's not been acceptable. And I'm sure Matt Potter had a few harsh words to say at halftime. 10 shots for the opposition, 0 on target for Kansas City.
There likely is an element of let's not overreact either after the season of 28 games where they only won 3. To win the Central Division and pick up 4 wins in the process in 6 games, it can't all go your way.
No, 100%, and you're right. I mean, it has been a vast improvement, and Matt Potter's done a great job, and so has everybody in the back office in terms of recruitment. But given the amount of money put in and the ambitions of the ownership, they want to be right up there with Portland Thorns and OL Reign and Washington Spirit and all the other teams that have been winning trophies. And on this performance today, and only on this performance, you've got to say they're maybe a step or 2 behind. Again, Matt Potter might say, well, judge us on Wednesday in the semi-final, and that's true as well. Let's wait and see how they perform then. But so far, if you look at the stats, 11 shots on target for Portland Thorns, currently 0 for Kansas City Current.
Stats perform, offering the expected goal count at just shy of 2 for Portland, so they've likely been a little more clinical than statistics would indicate. This ball rolled ahead, Edmonds. That's cut out for Kansas City, 0.29. Their expected goals in the opening 70 minutes.
I think it just proves the point that it's nowhere near what Matt Potter would want. But again, if you have a nice 20 minutes at the end, maybe pull a goal back, just give the team a little bit more of a confident feel going into Wednesday's semi-final against North Carolina. Courage.
Weinbrenner looped that up. Curran took a tough tumble on the backside. Bixby was there.
Heavy fall there, and just shaking that off is Curran.
Second time Curran has gone down. Came off the field a little bit earlier too.
A great commitment from her to get stuck in, and maybe that's something else we haven't seen quite enough of. And again, I know we're being harsh on Kansas City, but they've impressed so much, winning their division and getting to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. You sort of come into this match expecting a little bit more of them in terms of commitment.
Smith somehow able to find Weaver. Has the support of Sugita. This will bounce back. Sugita nearly a second crack. Instead, Coffey through Weaver. There's French. And Weaver going over the top. Down harshly.
Oh, how powerful was French coming out there? It was strong, positive, and got the ball and a bit of Weaver there in the process. And Weaver's now going to be subbed. And what a good match she's had. Scoring a goal, having an assist, I felt, at the far post for the second goal, setting it up for Christine Sinclair. And all over, just been a very, very good target play. No wonder they're standing up and giving her applause. I think she well deserves it.
Everett's going to come on for Weaver, who scored the opener for the Thorns back in the 8th minute.
Yeah, she was in the right place at the right time for the Sinclair shot, but then she's the one who also helped set up Sinclair for her goal. So she had a hand in 2 of them, scoring 1, assisting the other. But her overall leading the line play, I thought, was excellent tonight.
Second overall pick back in 2020. Everett coming in off the bench. Remember talking to Mark Parsons about trying to get a read on Morgan Weaver, who wasn't quite that high up. There were mock drafts that listed her as a second-round draft pick back in the day. Ultimately went second overall. Went to College Cup to try and get a read of Weaver against those College Cup caliber center backs. Going to the USID camp to try and see what the attitude was like with Smith and Weaver around players at the top caliber of that age group. And just trying to find as many different ways to find out just a little bit more. When you have those top 2 picks in the draft, you certainly have to make them count. Leach came on at the stop there. And just like that, Kansas City has used their entire 5-sub allotment.
And again, Mike, for our international viewers, as this is going all over the world, a lot of them won't understand the draft system and how it works. But clubs get to choose one after the other, do they not, in terms of the best youngsters coming out of college?
And it's based on the previous year's results, or in the case of the NWSL, it feels like there are, over the course of 4 rounds, 8,000 trades to try and unwind to figure out who got traded for what asset and allocation money. And it is a little complicated when you begin to really look at it through that lens. But yes, in theory, that's the basic.
So the teams who struggle most get the first choice of the new players coming into the system.
Unless you're a team like Portland, who savvily moves some draft picks around through trades and acquisitions. And then you can be both a great team and select at the top of the draft.
It's a system that is unknown outside of the States, hence the question for our viewers in the rest of the world. But it's a system that works very well in America, and I must admit I've grown to enjoy it and to appreciate the benefits of spreading the talent as much as you possibly can amongst all the teams.
As opposed to the system you came from.
Well, these days it's just money buys.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately where the system is. Back in the day, it used to be every club produced their own players, but now the biggest clubs buy the best players, and the biggest clubs get bigger. And it does seem to be a challenge for Europe and for the rest of the world, in fact. Again, credit to America that in American football, they managed to move the success around from one franchise to the next because the worst team gets the first pick of a quarterback. And initially, from overseas, you think it's not a good system, and then suddenly you realize that it does spread the success, doesn't it? And teams like Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is that the right terminology? Buccaneers, yeah?
Well, sometimes you go out and get a 40-something-year-old quarterback instead of a #1 pick. But to your point, ultimately there is a fair amount of parity any given year in this league. I think that's what most would agree makes it great to watch. Anybody can beat anybody any given day. Certainly, both on the women's side and the men's side, there are plenty of top leagues where that does not exist.
Very true. If you look at France, it's almost always PSG. In England, there's 2 or 3 teams only are going to win it, and I think Bayern Munich have won it for the 9th or 10th time in a row in Germany. So yeah, I do think that moving the talent around is not a bad way to go, and credit to the US system for doing that.
Barcelona, with their incredible attendance numbers, with a goal difference in their league through 27 games of +138. And a perfect 81 points of 81 possible. And there's that pesky Champions League. Wolfsburg for Barcelona on the day. And upward and onward for Barcelona women. 79th minute here. Pickett got ahead to that. rolls awry.
Well, that's why you have the likes of Pickett on your side. Does get in front of the others and get the flick on, although you wanted to flick it into the middle, not wide of the post. And of course being very critical, but your near post header is meant to flick it on for the others to finish off, and that one unfortunately just going out of play. But again, Bella Bixby has not really had a hell of a lot to do.
Look at the pressure from Kansas City.
That's, at least it's a bit more positive, and maybe that's what Matt Potter's getting out of his team in the last few minutes. Is their head is still up, they're still pushing forward, and they still want to make something of this game, and credit to them for doing that. They could easily lie down and think, well, you know what, we've got a semi-final coming up, let's concentrate on that. But they are trying to get on the front foot.
I'll get out over the far touchline. Mentioned earlier, by the way, Barcelona and Lyon headed to that UEFA Women's Champions League final in May. Catarina Macario among the U.S. players that have featured prominently in Champions League in Europe this year. 7 goals, 3rd most in the pack. Scoring an Olympico, I think, a couple of weeks ago in the domestic league. Look at this from Smith. Smith with a convoy of Kansas City players pulled out of the air by French. There are times where it feels Sophia Smith runs in a different gear than everybody else, and ultimately did find a way to get a shot off.
Wow, what a fantastic run. The crowd were all applauding. I nearly stood up and applauded as well. She was just able with pace, but not just the pace at which she's running, how good her close control is while she's running at pace. I think there were 4 white shirts around her, and she still managed to get a shot in. And I think by then she was half gassed by the time she got to hit the shot. But just have a look at the run and the way she controls it. Beats one player. Look at the white shirts trying to keep up with her. She's accelerating. There's 4 of them around her. She still manages to get an angle. And unfortunately, the final product was directly at Adi French. But if that had gone in the corner, what a finish that would have been.
Sinclair comes off, begins year number 10 of the NWSL with goal number 55 in the regular season. Pogarsh coming in, and Yasmin Ryan as well. Klingenberg comes off after some exceptional service from wide areas, and both teams have utilized all 5 available substitutions now. Down the line, Weaver. Weaver the cutback, seeking Ryan. Flag stayed down on this, rolled toward Ryan, and there was a cavalcade of KC players in the way.
I think applause from the crowd there for the fact that Portland Thorns are still pushing forward. They're not just sitting back on the 3-0. They're trying to get more goals. I think the fans are loving them for that. It really has been a fantastic performance. Not much more that Coach Wilkinson can ask for. 3 goals, so far a clean sheet. Fantastic performances by Sinclair, Smith, and many others. It's the perfect day at the office on the opening day of the season.
Couple of Canadians enjoying the moment, and rightfully so. Rian Wilkinson joked with us ahead of that first Challenge Cup game that we had a chance to talk to her. LeBlanc takes over as the GM, and a number of Canadians led by Sinclair in the organization. Would they possibly have another one on the touchline? The answer was yes. Ball's driven across by Smith and ceded to the current. This is Pickett on the run, and now leading Hamilton dummied that through. Drilled off frame. One of the better attacking movements from Kansas City in this game.
It was one of the few that they've had. Izzy Rodriguez there with that left foot shot just wide, and Kristen Hamilton with a dummy there. Clever dummy. Wasn't too far wide, but in the end, Bixby not even attempting to dive, so she felt it wasn't really much of a threat. And I think, are we still sitting on a situation where there hasn't been one shot on target yet? You just think from a stats point of view, I think there has actually been one shot on target. I'm going to say you can't end a match Kansas City current without at least getting something on frame.
Saving it all for Wednesday.
Well, I mean, I think that's how their fans will see it, as, you know, we've got a semi-final coming up. Given how we struggled last season, it's exciting to be in the semis, and we'll take it from there. This is just the opening game of a long season. And, you know, we had to rest a few players coming into this match, and the three they did rest, Desiree Scott, Victoria Pickett, and Kristen Hamilton, are three of their top players. So obviously that's going to have an impact on the outcome of this match.
Smith was tracked down by Weinbrenner, who ultimately had to put it out for a corner. The Riveters, who once glorified A.D. Franch's name, on their feet behind the now Kansas City goalkeeper. Pogarsh went short. Coffey delivers the ball to the back post. Steered out as far as Luera. Pickett on the run.
Look how the black shirts are getting back in numbers. The effort to get behind the ball has been super impressive. I didn't see the same effort from the team in white, but certainly Portland Thorns running as all of them running back as quickly as they can to get into defensive positions. Very impressive.
Back to Hubley, and this Portland defense looks to add a clean sheet. Bella Bixby conceded the fewest goals per game in the league last year, among those who qualified for the statistic.
Well, it'll happen again this year if they don't allow any shots on target.
Yeah, at this rate, it's looking okay. Pogarsh stabs it ahead. Oh, Sophia Smith! Weinbrenner successfully shielded that back.
It's a great little bit of skill. Absolutely brilliant from Sophia Smith. And that's going to get shown a few times on social media. Wonderful skills and great awareness. Pogarsh with the ball through there. Have a look here. Gets it and then feels where the play is and just drags it around and through the legs.
Portland once more. Smith.
Well, at least the Kansas City current fans have got a couple of home games coming up besides the Challenge Cup semi against North Carolina Courage on Wednesday. They're then home to Houston Dash before they travel to Orlando Pride. So Matt Potter will, assuming of course they're not in any finals, because that could get thrown in there as well.
Spun out to the ground.
For the Thorns, their upcoming games: North Carolina Courage away, OL Reign at home. That will excite Rian Wilkinson. There's a bit of revenge needed from the Challenge Cup, I would suggest. And then Washington Spirit, last year's champions, at home. So some exciting games coming up for Thorns, and hopefully they'll be fully over all their COVID issues by then.
Everyone who was in protocol last week available today. Couple came off the bench. That Cascadia rivalry match on May the 13th will air in the U.S. on national TV on CBS Sports Network. For fans that are new to Twitch, There are games throughout the regular season that you'll find exclusively right here, both domestically and internationally. If you're located outside of U.S. borders or you find other means, you'll find Twitch broadcast throughout the entire season. Get to follow the NWSL all season long. And after the game, Gary will sit down and read the entire chat thread, all of it. He'll read it to me all night.
That little move there sums up Kansas City, just not working for them. Just looking at the stats again as they are at this moment in time. 19 shots for Portland Thorns, of which 12 were on target. That's a very good return. I'm guessing that's about 66% or thereabouts. For Matt Potter's side, 5 shots, just the 1 on target. Not impressive. But again, I don't think he needs telling. He knows that this has been a tough match for them, and it tells on his expression. But it'll be happy days if they win on Wednesday night, and maybe they can learn from this. A lot of coaches will say it doesn't do you any harm to sometimes get put in your place by a very good team. It just reminds them that, hey, if you want to be the best, you're going to have to at least match the likes of Portland Thorns and OL Reign, and that sets the standard for Kansas City Current.
And Gary, fair to say, it just felt like the momentum of this match from nearly the opening kick put Kansas City on their heels in a way they never quite were able to rebound from.
100%. The pressure, the high press, the skills of Portland Thorns, the threat up front. Weaver, I thought, was top class in leading the line, and Christine Sinclair, of course, in finishing the goals and assisting was fantastic. So yeah, they just had too much going for them. If it had been a full strength Kansas City side, maybe it might have been different. But when they left their three of their top players out, I think it was always going to be a tough one at Providence Park as well.
We're about 3.5 minutes away from saying that Portland is 5 wins from 5 games, opening their regular season at home. This will be their 7th win in 9 tries in regular season openers, in which to this point they have scored 20 and conceded 4.
Wow.
They don't just open the season with wins, typically open them with fairly convincing results at that.
And it's making a statement, and I get it. It's you know, everybody else look at this result and go, wow, Kansas City have been good. They beat them 3-0. And it makes everybody else go, wow, they're as good as they've ever been, Portland Thorns. And I think that's what you want to do as a professional side. Send out a message that makes other teams not just respect you, but worry about playing you because of your intentions and the way you start off the season. And it's not to say Kansas City haven't tried to do that. It's just I think on the day they just haven't been good enough.
Sagita, brilliant. Outside Pogarsh. Didn't hit that right. Sagita pulled that down from the 2nd story.
Again, look at the high pressure. They've played through it this time, but there's black shirts hunting them down whenever they get the ball, and it's been difficult to create too much in the attack. Okay, there you go. Possession lost, and now they've got to defend, and that's been the story of this match. Great pressure from Portland Thorns, inability of Kansas City to play through the pressure and keep possession, and so they've been pretty much defending for most of this match.
Weinbrenner helps up Smith. Smith, the subject of a Nike advertisement that the Thorns were proud to make mention of. Sophia's first touch will be your last.
Well, if people around the world didn't believe it when she stuck the one in the top corner within minutes of coming on second half, they would have to start to believe that she is a wonderful talent.
It's going to lead to a French goal kick. And yet, everyone you talk to says Sophia Smith is not a finished product. There is a chance this year we're going to see something truly spectacular. Pogarsh. Impressive leap there from France.
Just on your point, when we were chatting to Rhian Wilkinson, I think we did mention this earlier in the broadcast, but her comments about Sophia Smith, well, she will improve hugely. Well, I'm saying, well,
how?
Look, she's still learning the game, and she said at times she's almost unmarkable. And I tell you what, that is true, given what we've seen. And then she says, and Hina Sugita will change the league. That was her comment, will change the league. Well, how good do you have to be to change the league? So those two players alone must have Portland Thorn fans super excited.
All the way back, the cutback ball. Bixby jumps on the ball, secures the clean sheet, and a 3-goal win for Portland secures the first 3 points of the regular season for the Thorns. Certainly no hangover from the disappointment in the Challenge Cup, and Kansas City will look forward to Wednesday's Challenge Cup semifinal after coming up empty on the road at Providence Park to begin 2022.
Yeah, that about sums it up. Portland Thorns, fantastic, excitable season ahead. Sophia Smith, brilliant. And so too was Weaver and Sinclair. Rhian Wilkinson's got to be super happy. On the other side, tough day at the office for Kansas City Current. They were outplayed, and I don't think there's any doubts about that. But as Adi French gets a hug from all her former teammates and a chance to chat to them, Kansas City Current can bounce back in style on Wednesday and book themselves a place in the final. So lots to play for Kansas City, but a little reminder of how tough and how good this NWSL league is, and how they're going to have to raise their game to be better than the classy players of Portland Thorns.
Guess who's back? Back again. Portland's back, and they win 3-0. We'll wrap it up when we return. A common sight on opening weekend at Providence Park. A 3-0 win over Kansas City. And the Thorns are off and running to begin the 10th anniversary season of the NWSL. The Riveters celebrate, and that Canadian flag is at the right place at the right time. Here come the highlights. Mike and Gary to wrap it up. We begin in the 8th minute of play. It starts with Rodriguez unlocking Sinclair.
Sinclair with a decent shot. 80 gets a hand in it, but just in the right place at the right time. Morgan Weaver, who I thought had a really, really good match, sticks it in the back of the net. They're all pumped up, and they just kept on putting pressure on Mike. They had so much opportunity here on the edge of the box, just playing it around. Ball's going to come in from Quika. Challenge at the far post by Morgan Weaver. And who's the quickest to respond? It's Christine Sinclair.
Then skip ahead to the 51st minute, 2-0 to Portland. Klingenberg would unlock Smith, who unlocks this. Whoa.
What a strike. With hardly a lift back. She touches it once, and then on the half volley, or just on the volley as it pops up, 80 French gets a hand, but can't keep it out the back of the net. Fantastic finish. Golazo from Sophia Smith, who'd just only been on for a few minutes, and, well, that's not going to be a good reading for Matt Potter. Is it 12 shots on goals for the home side, 1 for Kansas City Current. They're going to have to improve their game for the semi-final on Wednesday if they want to make it through to the final. But I think credit also to Portland. They were just way too good on the day.
So Portland wins this one 3-0. Plenty more NWSL action for viewers outside the United States. The rest of the weekend is right here on Twitch. For those of you within the U.S. border, flip over to Paramount Plus. For our entire Vista NEP crew, led by producer Mackenzie Pierce, director Gage Tillotson, Manny Simone, Jason Goebel, and our wonderful crew in Portland, Gary Bailey alongside Mike Watts, saying thanks for watching. Thorns 3, Kansas City 0. This is the NWSL on Twitch.